Welcome to CNP TV. I'm Michael Ward. I'm so excited to have this conversation today with G. Smalls, the author of Black Enough, Man Enough. I've been waiting to get you here so long to talk about this book. I just want to say thank you for writing it and thank you for having this conversation with me today. But how are you feeling?
I feel amazing. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm a long-time supporting fan of the Counter Narrative Project. So I'm excited to be here, and I love that you're excited to have me here. So no, I'm feeling good. So thank you.
You're definitely welcome. So I just want to kind of start with the beginning, right, of getting into writing your book. So you have this idea, you want to write this book, and I'm pretty sure you tell everybody with your family and friends. So what was kind of like that reaction of them knowing that you're writing this book, and how did they feel after like reading the book?
So I never planned on writing a book, for one. So it was never my intention to write a memoir.
Really?
No, never. So maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, my husband and I used to do a lot of life and relationship coaching. We had a show called Love Works. We talked about love and relationships, etc. And so we were going to be writing a book together about relationships. It was a self-help book of sorts, but using our own personal stories together and the lessons we learned from them and sharing them with other people. A part of that writing process was for me to write a backstory of my life before meeting Juan, and Juan to do the same. And so really the backstory just developed into the memoir, Black Enough, Man Enough. And it just coincidentally, Juan wasn't as inspired to start or writing at the time. So it was really meant for me, I guess, to be writing this book. So that's how the book came along. And I don't know, it's interesting because I don't know at what point that I started telling people I was writing a book or that I had a book coming out. Of course, Juan knew right away, always very supportive. After reading the book, still very supportive. There was also obviously things that I shared about us, a lot of things that I shared about us that I had to make sure that he was okay with, and he was. But you know, having read, and this goes to my mom and Juan especially, because they're two main characters in the book, but having read our story from my perspective with anybody really, because everybody's perspective is always different and reality is always different. So them reading how I see our story and how I see, you know, situations that we've been through, sometimes they didn't always agree with it, you know? So that was always things that we had to talk about, but you know, he respects my perspective and supportive. Everybody's been very, very supportive. My mom probably had the hardest time just because of some of the stories we shared and some of the challenges we've experienced, but we got through them and we were able to get healing out of them, out of the book. So it's been good. I couldn't be more happy about people's reaction to it.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that, because I imagine like telling my life story and what everybody else would think about it, and it totally terrifies me. Like even putting it down to paper. So what was that process like as you started writing the backstory and coming into realizing like you were doing this book, and like what lessons did you learn about yourself? And I'm pretty sure you're probably still learning about yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely still learning, but writing the book definitely deepened a lot of understanding about myself. It allowed me to see my own patterns that I have had in relationships when having to talk about those stories and remember things. So I think probably one of the biggest things is how I saw a specific pattern in all my relationships, where I was one of those type of people that I guess would draw people in really quickly and give them so much, and then end up going to take it back when I feel underappreciated or like they don't, not grateful for it. And so I noticed a strong pattern in myself throughout relationships and doing that. So that was kind of very eye-opening for me. So it allowed me to figure out why do I do that? But yeah, so I mean, it was definitely scary. I still have it. One of the scariest stories I had to tell was of me and my ex-wife, because we are still not, we still don't have a relationship. So there's still, for me, a lot of things that weren't talked about, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of scary for me. And she didn't want to read the book. I asked her to please read it, but she didn't want to read the book. She just wanted to, stay away from that, if you will. But that was probably one of the hardest. And so I haven't gotten any reaction out of her because she's not going to read it. So.
Yeah, I think the honesty and the transparency, even in telling that story, because you went there, right? Like you totally said everything as far as like what happened with that relationship and your side of it and going there, and that transparency and that honesty, I think is a story that I like reading it. I was just simply like, wow, like you are really opening yourself up to this. And one of the things that I find so important, especially working with CMP, is telling our stories and owning our truths and being vulnerable and opening ourselves up to these things and finding that within it. So definitely so much thank you for that, and hopefully with your relationship with her as well, I hope that you both reach that kind of ground. I want to kind of start with your beginnings of where you started, as you said, with your mom. I know this book touches on so much stuff, identity and being a person of mixed race as well too, and that experience of growing up. And I know that plays such an important factor in your relationship with your mother. So, I want to ask, as far as that relationship with her, one of the most beautiful things actually between both of your parents that I read in the book is that act of forgiveness between you and your mom, of getting to that place of understanding each other as adults. So I actually missed the video that you have with your mom, but where are you in terms of that relationship with your mom after the book that you all are working with?
So I think it's brought us closer. It definitely brought us closer. She was very uncomfortable reading some things and things that I remembered that she didn't remember. And, feeling guilt from some decisions she some decisions she made along the journey of raising us that she had to get past and settle with. But overall, it brought us closer. It allowed her to find out in ways in which I felt that she didn't know. So always telling people the truth and giving more of yourself is going to be, that transparency is going to always bring you closer. And so it's brought us closer. We've healed from some things. There were things in the book that she wasn't actually comfortable with me putting in. So I did take some things out that she wanted me to take out. And I was fine with that because I still felt like, I felt like there were a lot of details that I could have still given about certain stories, even though I was like extremely transparent, as you can see. But there were still other stories that I could have told, but some things didn't need to be told because all it would do is I think I've had enough story to justify or to explain or help people understand my decisions in life. So I didn't need to add an extra detail that might have hurt somebody if it was out there, if people already get the point. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you can believe it.
Yeah, I get you.
So I was cool with that. And since then we've been closer. We've been good. I think we have a level of understanding with each other where we allow each other to be who we are. And we accept each other. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a very beautiful thing, because as somebody who was raised in a household, like you say, is we don't talk about family business outside of this house. What happens in this house stays in this house, and we keep our secrets very close to our chest.
And we don't even talk about them in the house.
I mean, honestly, and as you said in the book, that's one of the things you realize as an adult, is that a lot of times when we're kids, we're just forced to be angry, deal with it, but we can't outwardly show it, right? So we have to keep all of these things inside, and it ends in this explosion that you and your mom have in this book. And I'm just kind of like, so many parallels. So I think that's kind of the thing, even as somebody who grew up, with both parents being Black, it's like, wow, like even reading your story, I identified so much with that. And especially with your relationship with your father. I think the part that got me, like really broke me down, was Lakara, I believe is her name. Okay, I'm one of you circle. Hey,
you're making me emotional during this interview.
Listen, I'm telling you, you had me. I think because getting that information to somebody who now is publicly out, and realizing like the relationship that I have with my father, who thankfully is still alive, and we have had a chance to work on our relationship and repair that. And reading how Lakar came and was telling you all of those things with your relationship with your father, and um, I feel like sometimes God does give you the message through other people,
Yeah.
and gets into that. But even growing up with that relationship with your father, if you can just talk a little bit about like growing up with your father and how that kind of influenced you as a parent now to your son.
So, God rest his soul. So my dad was the one thing about my father. He's extremely responsible. He took his responsibilities very seriously, and he loved his kids. He didn't have his father in his life. His father was actually a man that lived down the street, and I tell this in the book as well. A man that lived down the street that had another family. His mom was the mistress, and so this was a man in a family that denied his existence for a very long time. And so he was determined not to be that father. So he was, in his way, he sacrificed a lot for us. He sacrificed, I believe, a large part of his happiness for us. And so he was very responsible. And so one thing that he always was very intentional about is teaching us to be responsible as well, and teaching us at a very early age that he allowed us to be independent in thought. Never forced his beliefs on us, never forced anything on us, but always just had the response to whatever we were doing was, as long as you're happy, as long as you're happy. So I feel like I picked that up from him. I am a very responsible person, always have been. And I also allow my son to be independent in thought. I share with him who I am, but I don't ever force anything on him. I allow him to journey through as he will, and I am there to support. And so I feel like that's definitely something that I picked up from my father.
That's awesome. Thank you. What is it like though now as a parent, to a Black son in this time where we have so much going on? Like we got the police brutality, we've got the elections coming up, so much of our masculinity, as you said, even in your book, from what you believe was tied to, outside forces, how you look, your mixed heritage, your weight, all of these kind of things. As a parent to a Black son right now, kind of what of those conversations that you're having with him, about Black Lives Matter and about being a man and all of those things? I know this feels real deep, right?
Yeah, I mean, so no, it's good though. It's good stuff. I like deep conversations. So like we talk about what's going on all the time. And so what's interesting about my son is that he's very driven. He's very laser focused. He's a 19-year-old. He's extremely focused on I don't even call it a career, because to me, career says go to a job and have this career, but he's very focused on his life and his development of his life. So he is so not consumed about what's going on with Black Lives Matter. He's not consumed with what's going on with the presidency. I actually have to make sure you go. I made sure he go register to vote. He's really not that interested, though. I'm just telling you, he's just not that interested. But I made sure he go register to vote. And I'm making sure that he's voting. But aside from that, we have conversations when he thinks about Trump or these things that happen. Even with Black Lives Matter, we have these conversations. But he's very mellow. He's extremely positive thinking, and he gets that a lot from me. Like I'm very much into power of attraction. I've been very much into creating my own reality. And so although all of this noise is going on around us, he's able to separate himself from that and say, my life is going to be wonderful aside from what's going on. So that's kind of like what those conversations are like. That's kind of like his perspective. Like he's not I don't feel like he's a typical 19-year-old, He's just so very in his own little zone, that he doesn't have a whole group of friends that he hangs around all the time or anything. He has a serious girlfriend. So it's like, he's so mature. I'm so proud of him.
I love it. And I see it even through your social media and your Instagram, the love that you have and putting, you don't want to call it his career, but what he does out there and really
Yeah.
lifting him up and giving him that support, because I think it's so important right now with everything that we're going through of pouring into our legacy and who's coming behind us and the men that we're lifting up and all of these things. So I love to see it. Like that brings such a smile to my face when I went to see that recently. But I want to take a turn right now because I know I know it's getting a little bit deep for me. One of the things that I love being in Atlanta, as you pointed out in the book, is it was one of the first times for me as a Black gay man of coming here. And I was like, oh, y'all are beautiful. And all of y'all like men, like all of y'all are like really into men. And it really
Yeah.
blew my mind as somebody who has was born in Houston, Texas, moved from Jacksonville, Florida here. And I didn't really have a community, you know, like around me in Jacksonville. And I came here to Atlanta. And I love how you pointed out in the book, one of the reasons of moving to Atlanta, of course, was to get away from a small town. I want to make sure I'm phrasing it right for you, but coming here and realizing some of those things in Atlanta, what were those conversations that you were having with yourself about, you know, realizing your dreams and actualizing those when you moved here?
So, you know, I moved here when I was 18. So this is like
You was a
20,
baby.
hella 25 years ago. So
And you
my
look like you're
mindset
still
when
20, so yes.
I'll take it. And so my mindset back then, I was very, you know, I went to DeVry. So I was into information technology because at this time, this is what everybody says. If you want to make good money, you go learn on computers. And so that's what I did. I came to Atlanta to do that. But Atlanta was like a big culture shock for me because I had I would say I grew up in a, not obviously, but I grew up in a Black neighborhood. While I grew up with a lot of Black people, it was a different culture of Black people here in Atlanta. And it was the first time that I saw what I thought at the time, so many successful Black people, you know, with these driving these luxury cars, but they're not drug dealers like they were where I'm from in Charleston. If you saw somebody with a Mercedes or a Benz or you know, a Lexus or whatever the case may be, you automatically assume they were a drug dealer because that's what people had to do to get that. Black people perceivably had to do to get money like that where I'm from. And so to come here to see that was amazing. It was very inspiring to me. It allowed me to see that I can do that too. I can, you know, my dream was that I want to work in this building on the 35th floor in my cubicle. You know, that's what I was, my dream. And I made it there. That's what I did. And those dreams, for me, were very, I always played it safe. I always played it safe when I was younger. I did what I knew that I could do. You know what I mean? And so those dreams were easily realized for me. And so I quickly got bored, but didn't know what I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew I had certain things that I liked to do. Okay. I was blogging at the time. I used to blog all the time. So that was something I know I was very passionate about. But then I met Juan. I met Juan when I was 31. And so Juan was always the complete opposite of me. So he was the risky person. I played it safe. You know, I went to my corporate job, got my good benefits and my good little salary, or whatever the case may be. But Juan was the one, while he was working in corporate America, he was the one that was working on his passions, if you will. You know, he was never afraid to take risks and do those things. So he really inspired me to be like, damn, you know, what I want to do now, you know? And so I've always liked throwing parties and events and such. So I started an event production company. And from the event production company, it grew into the Gentleman's Ball. And the Gentleman's Ball grew into the Gentleman's Foundation because I became very passionate about providing space for guys that looked like me, especially the younger ones, so they didn't have to experience what I did. You know, I had came out on the other side of being this DL man, if you will, and living in secret and being ashamed. And here I am on the other side, and now I have fallen in love with this amazing man, and I'm able to accept myself for who I am as a fluid man, or as a bisexual man, or as a gay man at the time. I felt like I was gay, you know, so at the time. But, you know, I was inspired to share that so those young guys didn't have to experience that. And so that's where a lot of those passions came from. And then obviously it turned into this book. The restaurant, we also have a restaurant as a strong passion of mine, was actually only supposed to be, we wanted to provide a space for Black, same gender loving men in the LGBTQ community. Because we didn't have any spaces that was owned by us. We wanted to have a bar and lounge.
Right.
The bar and lounge turned into a Gullah Geechee restaurant because we decided that we was going to cook the food I love to cook. I've always been cooking. So we decided
And it's good, y'all.
food.
It's good.
Thank you. Thank you. It turned into a restaurant. And so now it's like, you know, and you read in the book as well on my father having that influence on me to help me realize these things. But now it's like, if you would have told me that I would have been right here, you know, 10 years ago, I would have been like, you out of your mind. I'm writing a book.
Yeah.
At a restaurant, like it's crazy to me. But now I'm like, what am I doing next? You know, I'm ready for the next thing.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that a little bit too, because you talk about it in the book. You talk about creating spaces for Black LGBT and your experience of what I call finding your voice and using your voice and your platform to affect change. When you saw the rules that were posted on Blake's, when it was clearly geared toward Black people, no hoodies, no caps, all of those kind of things. Like where, and you talk about this a little bit in the book, but I just want for everybody watching, like, where did you find your voice as far as speaking up about that and getting over your fear of not being good enough and not being enough and not being a person you felt like in that particular instance that was able to speak up about it?
You know, I just think that it's just a journey to self-love. It's admitting to yourself your challenges, because you can't get over challenges, and you can't truly completely continue to love yourself until you see yourself and admit to yourself who you are. And once you're able to admit to once I'm able to say, I know I couldn't identify at the time, or maybe I could, but I wasn't admitting why I didn't step up more in that situation, but it was because, you know, I felt like, do I have any right to be speaking on behalf of Black people? You know what I'm saying?
No.
And so to be able to speak that to myself and to be able to acknowledge that I felt that way allowed me to have compassion for why I feel that way. You know, we have compassion for other people and what they go through, but we very seldom have compassion for ourselves and what we went through. And so being able to admit that, having compassion for my journey allows me to love that part of myself and roll past that. And so I think that's how I found my voice and to know that I am Black enough. I am enough, period, just how I am, and I don't have to show up any differently. So I think that's how I found my voice and was able to confident enough to use it. But don't get it twisted. It's not always. It's still a challenge sometimes. But you know, I have to fight towards that fear, you know, in order to completely always get over it. So, you know.
I know what you mean. I think that's kind of one of the things as far as like using your voice, affecting change, telling your story, finding all of those kind of ways. It's like I say, it's a very fearful and kind of vulnerable place to be, which is a lot of times very scary for most of us. But kudos for speaking up and doing that, because one of the things too, as somebody who is a transplant to Atlanta learned, I'm like, there's still racism within the community. You know, even being a person this of LGBTQIA+, there's still racism that we face, and finding these spaces and finding our tribes and our communities and what you were able and what you and Juan are able to create with Virgil's is just a beautiful representation of that. And I love it. I love the atmosphere of it. The food is good. So definitely stop by, check it out. And of course, everybody, Juan and G, everybody is asking when I told them that I was going to be talking to you, you know, you all both, to a lot in the community, are a power couple. And I saw this really wonderful post that you talked about that, how you used to not like to be called a power couple, and now the differences between how you feel about that. So can you just talk a little bit about, you know, your relationship, as most people would view you all as a power couple in the Black community?
So you want me to speak to how I feel about power couple, being a power couple? Is that what you're asking me?
For the people that may not have, for the people who may have not seen the post of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I always felt like power couple was very superficial term. You know, people say they want to be a power couple, and you hear people say when they want to be a power couple, they're like, you know, we're gonna get this money together, we're gonna get this house together, and you know, we're gonna do this together. And I always felt like it's always been superficial, a superficial term. So when people would call us a power couple, I just didn't like it because I didn't feel like I was a superficial person or materialistic person. And that wasn't my goal. And I also feel like a part of that as well, and I didn't put this in the post, but in just talking about it, was I've always kind of downplayed myself. And in downplaying myself is also downplaying my relationship. And so not being able to own myself as a power couple, if you will. But on the other side of that, I also feel like I was able to see us as a power couple because of our relationship and not the things that we have achieved together. And I feel like we have been able to achieve, if you will, things together because of our relationship and the relationship that we have. And so, you know, what makes us a power couple for me is being able to be transparent with each other and being able to still be together and not have any money at all, and being able to hurt each other because you're going to hurt each other, but being able to forgive each other and still love each other, and being able to not like certain things about a person, but accept them and love them for it anyway. So all of those things for me are what make us a power couple, because we do have that. And I'm extremely grateful because I know that it's rare. It doesn't have to be rare. It doesn't have to be rare, but it is rare that that I have found my person, you know, my partner for my life, you know. So that's to me is what makes us a power couple.
I love it. And I think it's so beautiful for you both sharing your story and sharing just your love journey through this book. I mean, if you don't have it, please get it, because I mean, you really go through everything, the insecurity, your own issues, how you show up in this relationship, who you were, the mistakes that you made, the triumphs that you both were able to work through, everything. Because from the outside looking in and not knowing much about you or Juan in your relationship, it's very beautiful. And there's not many images that I've been able to see in my life, sadly, more so now, but I think of love that triumphs through the challenges and that work. And one of the things that you talk about is going to therapy, and you both had a conversation with a therapist about your relationships and those things that you all wanted to work on. What is that journey like in therapy, in couples counseling, of going through those things? How has that affected your relationship?
So therapy is so good.
I agree.
It's just so good. I love therapy. You know, I started going to therapy when I was with my ex-wife. We started going to couples therapy. And while it didn't, you know, keep us together, I felt like it actually gave me the strength to leave. And when I did separate from her, I started seeing a different therapist who I feel like helped me come into myself and allowed me to stand in the fact that I'm attracted to men. You know, so it helped me through all of those things. But for our relationship, Juan and I started seeing a therapist at year 2. And one thing that, for 2 reasons, we decided to go see a therapist. One reason was because we had started trying to do a reality show. And this was, like I said, 10 years ago. And we felt like, so, you know, we should start going to counseling just to keep us strong, because we see these couples break up through reality TV. We need to go to counseling to keep us strong. And, you know, I was always a proponent of counseling. Juan was as well. You know, he was great with counseling and therapy. And the other reason is because we were having sexual challenges. And for me, I wasn't getting enough sex. And you know, at the beginning of me and Juan's relationship, we had a conversation about how we feel about sex and relationships. Juan was the type of person where he was like, not a big deal to me, you know, it's blah, blah, blah. I don't really care about it. You know, it's good, whatever the case may be, but I could like not have sex and be fine. And I'm like, you know, oh my God, I have to have it. You know, this is And so we started off that way. So by year 2, I felt like, wasn't having sex enough, and he wasn't as open, and you have to read the details in the book, but he wasn't as open sexually as I would have for me, and so we started going to therapy to help us figure out what to do with that. And so for the past 10 years, I mean, it's been extremely like great. And like relationships, nothing helps you grow the most than a relationship. Because a relationship was a constant mirror to your face. There's constant togetherness. With a lot of togetherness, it is, and you grow up a lot. And so these past 12 years, we have grown up a lot, and our therapist continuously makes us see ourselves. She continuously makes us see ourselves. And what I've learned is, relationships, those conflicts you have are really about you, and it's really about them. And it's about you figuring out and seeing yourself in the conflict, because that's the point of the conflict, is to help you grow past something. It might show up in the relationship as not, trust or irresponsibility, whatever the case may be, but it's always about you. And so the fact that we both know that, helps us keep a long-lasting relationship. It does, because it helps you step outside of yourself, and it helps you, stop taking things personal,
Yeah. And somebody else that doesn't know you, that doesn't have a bias toward either one of you, and is able to look objectively at the situation, that really changes and challenges you both. So, and one of the good things too in the book, please get the book, is that your advice your father gave you about when you argue, it's not about being right or wrong, it's about focusing on the solution. Exactly. And as somebody who's got caught up a lot in I'm right, see my point, I was like, oh shit, this is like that moment where it's like, like this is a growing up. I don't always need to be right. I want to focus on
there is no right. More importantly, there is no right, there is no wrong. There is your experience and there's the person's experience. So it's not about it's never right or wrong, it just is. When we play right or wrong, we judge things. But no, it just is. This is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's just what it is. It's not right or wrong. Yeah. But the ego wants to say I'm right.
Yes. That ego, I'm telling you, it really does. It really does. So I appreciate that advice, because that was my check moment. I felt triggered and I had to go and be like, check myself and really explore that, unpack as a person that's in therapy. And as a music lover as well, which is also a form of therapy, I brought Lauren today because you talk so much about Lauryn Hill and music and how this helped you get out of that situation, and how music can be a comforter and all of those things right now. So just want to ask you, what role right now is music playing in your life in COVID-19 of what we're going through?
So what's interesting is that I listen to like the same stuff all the time. I don't listen to I very rarely listen to new music. Everything I listen to is what I guess you young people would consider old school. How old are you?
I'm 34 and I'm old school as well.
Okay, so everything I listen to is old school.
The oldies, and I've been stuck on the oldies.
Yeah, and so I still listen to Lauryn Hill. I still listen to Erykah. I'm a big fan of Erykah Badu. I still listen to Erykah Badu a lot. And I actually have this track that I had that is a playlist that I created called Happy. And so it's all of these songs that I put together that makes me happy and make me feel good. And typically I would listen to it when I go to the gym. So, and I've had that for like 6 years and I still listen to it. One of my theme songs in life that's on that track is probably Golden by Joe Scott. Because I feel like it's such a happy song and it's such an affirmation to say that I'm living my life like it's golden. That's why I try to stay in those moments. And so that's a big soundtrack. A big song on my soundtrack for life. But yeah, so that's I try to listen to music that always keeps me happy. And so that's the influence that music has on my life. I also listen to a lot of audio books and self-help books and because I'm always trying to keep myself in a positive mind state. And I know that what I read and what I listen to and what I watch is, I need to have something to balance the social media. Media.
Wait, but an audiobook, this isn't an audiobook, is it? I'm curious
Not
now.
yet. Not yet.
I'm curious. If you love audiobooks, then I think because there's power in speaking your words. Have you considered that?
No, I'm definitely going to do an audiobook. But, you know, in self-publishing, things cost a lot of money and a lot of your own time and labor. And so the audiobook I plan to start recording this year. And I actually want to get the book, I want to do a re-edit of the book before I do audiobook, because me reading it over and over, I still see things that I want to flush out a little bit more or change, or some typos that might be in there. So I want to do a re-edit, and then I'm going to record an audio. And I hope to release the audio at the beginning of 2021. And I will be, yes, I'm going to be recording it myself.
Come on, working man. So we've got the audiobook that's coming. We've got Virgil's, the restaurant. We've got this amazing book that's out right now. What is next for you?
So I hope to very soon in 2021, hopefully we'll open up another location of Virgil's. So that's definitely something we want to do. I'm also going to be starting a podcast at the end of the year. Podcast, video casts, if you will, that I'm starting at the end of the year. And yeah, I mean, I think that's enough right now. That's enough. And I'm always, as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking for the next project. But as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking for the next thing. So that's like always kind of, going on. And we will be planning the Gentleman's Ball 2021 for the 10th anniversary. We haven't done it. We didn't do Gentleman's Ball in 2019. We were going to do it this year, but COVID. And so next year, 2021, we'll be planning the 10th anniversary Gentleman's Ball. So that's going to be a big deal. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, I'm so excited for it. Gentleman's Ball 2021. And thank you again so much for just having this conversation with me. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but make sure that you all get Black enough, man enough. That way you can be a part of the Be Me Challenge on Instagram as well. I'm with that because, as he said, he's self-published. This is his hard work going in this thing. So we want to make sure that we support you as much as possible with it. So thank you again for your transparency and telling your story and changing the narratives that we have about, men that are mixed race, fluid, all of these things that are out there. So we want to support you. Any last words, any last thoughts? Where can people find you? All of those things.
So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you again for this interview and this opportunity. I love doing interviews where people have read the book. So because it allows you to, just go a little deep in the conversation. So it's been a great conversation. It's been an extremely great interview. So thank you for being so great. But people can find me at G Smalls, GESMALLS. The book is on Amazon, Kindle Books, Apple Books, and they can also go to my website, gsmalls.com.
Thank you. So everybody out there, make sure that you share this video, share the book, tell a friend to pick this up so much. So blessings, please be safe. I appreciate you again for the talk, and everybody else out there, be good to yourself. See you again.